nothing left for me to hate, so I can lay me down, my brothers, on the ground. I bled today until Coyote comes to raise me up and carries me
Hey, look at us.
Look at us. Huh? Who would have thought? Not me.
I feel like a really good way to introduce this podcast because I expect that's just basically going to be the analysis tonight. Look at us. Who'd have thought it? Anyway, hello and welcome to the Scottish Rugby podcast brought to you by the Scottish Rugby blog. I am Cammy Black. What a podcast we've got for you tonight. What a momentous game at the weekend, England and Scotland. We'll get to that in a moment. Joining me, though, to go through it, we've got John Anderson. Good evening, John.
Good evening, all. How the hell are we?
We've got Craig Manson. Hello, Craig.
Good evening. I have engaged smug face.
Good. Johnny McGinty's here as well. Hello, Johnny.
Good evening. My face is always smug.
And Ian Hay. Hello, Ian.
Hello, last and very much least. Hello, everyone.
Least smug.
I don't know. No, not after how Matt Fagerson played. No.
I feel like a 40-minute segment coming on just on Matt Fagerson at 18.
Look, there's so many areas where this entire podcast can just turn round and say, "Ha, we told you so," and we're going to spend about an hour doing that. You can watch us live. We're live Wednesdays 8:30 p.m. on YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch. You can also download the podcast afterwards on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, anywhere else that you can download audio podcasts. You can also sign up to our Patreon, patreon.com/Scottish Rugby Podcast from £3 a month, and that will get you extra weekly bonus content because we record a little bonus podcast after the main one, and you also get ad-free versions of the main pods as well. So, shall we just launch straight into this?
Seems reasonable.
I think the overall thing that we should start with is, and a lot of the kind of reaction to this is have Scotland finally arrived? I mean, are we now at a point where, as Scotland fans, John, this is the new normal? We shouldn't be expecting to go into these games and lose. We're going to be competitive from here on in. This is it now.
So, yes, to a certain extent. I think as Scotland fans, we've kind of come up across this quite often, and I think there is an element of, I think this team's very special, and I think they've been building, and there's been components that have been added to the team that have really started to make it a team that can certainly compete. And obviously, the last couple of years we've been quite close. So I think we really need to be optimistic, and I think we can be really confident. Like, we've sat in this podcast and said we don't feel necessarily that we're at all worse than the other teams. We should be beating them, in our opinion. So have we arrived? I think we arrived a couple of years ago, actually, but it just takes time. And let's be honest, we're playing against some of the best teams in the world. Like, England, despite the fact they're apparently ranked third in the world, which world rankings maybe need to be adjusted a wee bit, but England are a great side. Ireland are one of the best in the world. If not, I said on Twitter this week, it's great to see Ireland being the best team in the world 18 months before the World Cup, as per usual. These are really good teams, and Scotland we have been a long way behind them in the past, and we are probably on a par with many of them now. So I think we should be really confident where we're going with this. Should we expect it long term? Maybe not necessarily. I think, Scotland, we need to. This is probably the first generation of players that we've had that are truly competitive in the Six Nations era. It's about that next pipeline. It's about making sure that the talent coming through is up to speed quickly and ready to go. Scotland have never done that in the professional era yet, so let's see how we manage that. But that sounds awfully like a future John problem. Let's just enjoy the moment just now.
But I mean, Craig, but Scotland have depth, and I think that comes down to a lot of what went well on Saturday and what's gone well for Scotland, certainly over the past 18 months, is you can have someone like Grant Gilchrist come in, and I know we've got different opinions on Grant Gilchrist on this podcast, but Grant Gilchrist had a hell of a game, and he would probably have been fourth choice a year ago for Scotland.
Yeah, I think, when we talk about depth, I always worry when we start talking about depth, and everyone talks about depth, and haven't we got a lot of depth? And I understand that for me, it's what does the depth, you can say depth as much as you want, but what does that actually mean? And I think on Saturday, for me, it meant that we brought on our finishers, our replacements, our subs, whatever you want to call them, and there was either a step up or there was no change in what we could do on the field, and I think the big issue that Wales have, for example, and we'll talk about that further down the line, I guess, is the fact that we're getting things together, and it's taken some time, but we're getting things together. Our professional teams are working well, and they're producing young talent coming through, whereas we don't seem to have that in the four region Wales setup. So I think we've got the right coaches, the right players at the right time, and it's now starting to show.
Matt O'Hanrahan saying on YouTube, Craig, were you scared of swimming as a child? It's okay to talk about depth.
Don't take me there again. Don't talk about swimming.
Matt, thank you for keeping that clean. Because that could have gone another way. Johnny, how are you feeling about it? Right now, realistic. I mean, you go into these games and there's always a little bit of nerves, but personally, I got about half an hour into that match and thought this is going to be despite all the England pressure, the defence is holding up well. We're going to be okay here.
Yeah, I think as much as we're talking about how Scotland arrived and things, and we're going to gloat about this and we're going to say we were right about that. I will once again hold my hands up and say could not have been more wrong about Chris Harris, because he was phenomenal again on Saturday, and he's just like the last 18 months or so of him, I think, has been the difference maker for Scotland. So if we can keep that up, Fraser Brown was on the BBC pod this week. So I heard a bit of it on the radio this morning, and he said something really interesting, which was that we'd got out there and beaten England on Saturday without really playing any rugby. So I think that Scotland kind of have this idea that we've still got our own game that we can play. We didn't do that on Saturday. If we can go out and do that against Wales this week, it could be a totally different game, and I think Scotland have got to be favourites for that.
Yeah. Ian, how are you feeling about Scotland right now?
Worryingly confident. I'm not comfortable with this whatsoever. Also, Moshe Chen, you're correct. We do not call them finishers, Craig. They are substitutes or replacements, not finishers.
They're binges.
The Mick Bomb squad.
No, I think I was the same. Like, as you, Cammy, I think like with an hour gone, I was just like, yeah, we're losing, but I'm not worried. You know, we'd weathered the best that they'd brought to us, and even though like England and Eddie Jones had been given it the Scotland the red hot favourites, you look at that England team, that's still a team with a lot of quality players, a lot of Lions players, guys who have won titles and championships, but we were able to hold everything they had. Even the bright young talent Marcus Smith, who did play very well, but he's in the shadow of the master, wasn't he?
He played okay. I think that's the thing. Like, and we're all right. We can't talk about the England team on this podcast, if not to just mock them. But he was all right. Do you know what I mean? Like, he was really slow. I mean, I was watching Squid. For anyone who hasn't seen it, Squid has done an analysis of the game. It's excellent as always. I was watching it before we came on, but the number of times that he just kind of does a little kind of duck kind of waddle to try and like half step like 30 yards behind the gain line to give everybody it gives the Scottish defence all the time in the world just to move up very slowly and cut off all the options. He was all right.
The thing you've got with Marcus Smith is because of the way the press have hyped him, and because of probably England are a team that through a couple of injuries, but also through just mismanagement, find themselves in a position where they've got the most professional rugby players in the world, yet they've got the least competent, like, international side they've had in quite some time. And Marcus Smith's coming in. I'm not saying Marcus Smith's not a very, very, very talented individual. And it was interesting watching. It was Finn Russell was interviewed and he was asked about, would you like to play under Eddie Jones? And the answer was pretty telling. Of course he wouldn't. And, think about Marcus Smith playing under that. Like, the guy's been tearing it up in the Premiership. He's a very, very talented player. And, we're Scottish rugby fans, but we all know a good rugby player when we see one. And he's playing under an Eddie Jones game plan that just it'll stifle him. And, I don't want to predict a Danny Cipriani situation here, but there's every possibility of it because English coaches are so risk averse. And just think who's next in line for that job. If you think Richard Cockerell's coming in and going, Marcus, here's the keys to the Ferrari, off you go, son, you've got another thing coming.
I think one of England's biggest problems is, and it's something I was starting to say, there was a Rugby Pass chat after post-match that I was on, and then my Bluetooth headset I used was dying. England's biggest problem is they have had no succession planning at number 9. They're still stuck with Ben Youngs, who is adequate, I would say, but he's not very interesting. I mean, even a couple of years ago, they're calling up Willie Hines, at the age of 32 on like a grandparent rule.
What? Because he looks like a grandparent.
And then probably like but then you look at it, and because of that, one of the best scrum halves in England ends up scoring a try against them this weekend.
Yeah, and also they've lost, like they never gave Dan Robson a shot when he was playing well. Then he got badly injured. Ben Spencer's been there. They were still picking Richard Wigglesworth up until he was like 35, 36. Sort of flight commander Dickie Wigglesworth reporting for Josie Sam. So yeah, how long was the contract that the Rugby RFU gave Eddie Jones after World Cup? It was like 3 or 4 years.
500 years.
Well, we're going to see centuries of Scottish dominance. I think we've spoken about this before. Jones he's that kind of character that he comes in, is like Cockers, comes in, makes a lot of noises a lot, puts rockets up arses, gets performances for a while, and then players have said they didn't like going training. They would refuse call-ups. Like, oh God, he's going to put us through the ringer. I think he's, and I've been saying this for over a year to any England fan, listen, he's damaging that England team. He's damaging that squad. And
he was contracted through to the next World Cup, so 2023. Which is madness.
Yeah, I mean, I just...
And we know the RFU are skint, So there's no chance they're paying him off. So
That's why
they're
Cockers-
stuck.
That's the thing, though. You've seen. I don't know if I was listening to an interview with Cammy Redpath, and he was talking about how he was looking forward. He looks forward to going to Scotland camp because he has a real good laugh with the guys that he knows, and he's like getting to know the other people that are within the squad. He has great fun. They even the hotels that they have to stay in, because some guys get to go home and some guys don't because of obviously the distance. They still have a great time together, and I can guarantee you, no matter how posh Pennyhill Park is down south, it's a miserable place to be, because I wouldn't want to. They talk about how what the last England captain, what's his name, looks like a Toby jug.
They all look like Toby Jug. You've just described every England
Dylan Hartley?
ever.
Sorry,
Well
Dylan
done.
Hartley. Yeah, okay. Dylan Hartley.
That's reasonable.
They talked about how he would go through the ringer with Eddie Jones, and you think to yourself, hang on a minute, that's your captain. That's that's the guy who, okay, you want him to drive standards, but you want him to have fun in camp. And I just think it's that I think they got rid of their own coach. I think the press bullied them into getting rid of Lancaster.
I think
But
the thing
is
is,
Lancaster a club coach? Is he a club coach or is he an international coach?
I think he had the potential to be an international coach. I think Lancaster is from the same mould as Townsend. And I think the difference with this Scotland squad now to where it was at the start of 2020, when we had Finn Gate and we're coming off the back of that horrendous World Cup where Townsend said, I went away and I learned all these lessons. Like, the stuff that came out about how the camp was being run, and then the interviews since then with Finn Russell and with Gregor Townsend, where I think Townsend learned a lot from that fallout with Finn Russell, that camps need to be fun, especially during the pandemic. And I don't think that Eddie Jones is necessarily a learning coach.
No.
I don't see a massive amount of difference in the tactics that he deployed when he first took over England to now. It's the same tactics. He just keeps trying to find players to fit it, as opposed to Gregor Townsend, who I think has changed massively the way that Scotland play. And I know a lot of that's to do with the coaches he's brought in, like Steve Tandy, but they're brought in at Townsend's behest. They don't, the SRU don't force these coaches upon him.
There has been an overall switch as well, Cam. You're absolutely right. Like, Townsend has led an overall switch in the style. Like, Scotland play differently to what they did previously. So,
but Scotland played differently to how they played 6 months ago, and that's what's exciting with this Scotland team is that it's constantly evolving. They've got, like you said, John, we've got a really good squad now, but it's not. They keep bringing these other guys in, and it doesn't make a massive difference. There isn't a drop in quality when a Ben White comes off the bench. It's so whatever the plays are, and they know what to do. They trust everybody outside them. The fact that he got in on that try from the point, and he can't be. I mean, he might not even come on the pitch at all in terms of the way the game plan was. But to come on, take over from Ali Price, and to run that line, to get on the end of that ball, I think to me demonstrates, because that was that's a planned move. That just demonstrates how well everybody buys into the Townsend game plan, and that probably I think that's why this Scotland squad is different to the England squad. I think, Johnny, in that they're happier.
Yeah, I mean, obviously you've all not seen the hilarious banter video of Adam Radwan doing crazy golf trick shots this morning at the training pitch, which makes it look like the most unimpressive, miserable, organised fun you'll ever see in your life on the RFU Facebook page. But no, I think you're absolutely bang on. Like, you just get the impression that Scotland camp's a nice place to be, and they're obviously working really hard, because like it's a fairly complex system that they've got going in both attack and defence. They keep doing that move where they hit Matt Fagerson out the back of a line out and then inside their own 22. That takes a lot of practice, and my heart is in my mouth every single time they do it. So it's not like they're just going there and like juggling and eating Haribo. They're obviously working hard, but they're enjoying it at the same time.
Yeah. Should we talk about some of the kind of standout players? I think. I mean, obviously everybody stood out for Scotland, like we said, but can we talk about Darcy Graham first? because
Please, because the fact that he's
Why
not
not?
in Team of the Week is
Outrage.
infinitely upsetting.
I think the fact he wasn't man of the match upset me, and I know they have to announce it before the end of the game, and I know he hadn't got that turnover, but still his contribution up to that point had been superb. He was for a back, he was at the heart of defence. He was sticking in some really good tackles. If you watched that, the lead up to the Ben White try, he flies up and absolutely like fells Lewis Ludlam.
He hit Ludlam a couple of times and like properly hit him. And Ludlam's not a small guy. Like,
oh, he's huge. He's really bulked up, Ludlam, as well.
Yeah.
And not just some of the runs he was doing, some of the dummy runs he was doing, even, you know, the way that he competed with Lewis Cowan-Dickey, which was hilarious. But the fact that he goes up to almost, you know, put Cowan-Dickey under pressure, then immediately appeal for the penalty try.
He was integral in all three moments that basically led to us winning that game. That's the long and short of it with Darcy Graham.
But are you including, when England had a maul that was held up over the line? Are you including that in there, Johnny? Because I only noticed that on second view, and I think it's Russell and Johnson get under him, but then as soon as I can't mind who the England player goes to turn, Darcy Graham leaps on him to grab the ball. He's like, "Nah, mate, you're not moving anywhere. I've got this."
Yeah, it's unlike. I said this when we were speaking about Darcy Graham a couple of weeks ago. Like, the power that he generates with a frame his size is just like, it's ridiculous.
I mean, like when I was posting a video, I posted the video of him that last 15 seconds as well, from coming out the base of the scrum. He gets a turnover, and then he manages to get around to the back of the next ruck, and then just to kind of like rub Jack Noel's face in it.
But he came in from the side, and there was no clear release, mate. It's a penalty England all day.
I think somebody said for Darcy Graham to be supporting his weight in that position, he must have a hell of a core strength. And the temptation just replied, but he's Darcy Graham, of course he does. Was really strong.
Yeah, it was amazing. Actually, I was listening to the podcast version of what Johnny was listening to, and both Fraser Brown and Pete Horn were absolutely just, promoting Darcy Graham as they were just praising him to the hilt, because they were saying that Joe Marchant's ankles will be in splints this morning because he couldn't change direction as quick as Darcy. And you know, his core strength. They were talking about his strength and how he can, just as we've all, I'm just going over, you know, what you've all said, but he you know, in the tackle and the ruck, you know, he gets himself into places that traditional backs would never be. But also trying to pin him down when he's got the ball is just unbelievable. He shoulders people off, hands people off. He's absolutely fantastic.
I think it's been great as well. Like, we all know he had a pretty crappy 12 months in his personal life, and he wasn't on the field. He wasn't hitting the standards that he was. But you know, he had this. You know, I think it's public knowledge now, so I don't mind saying it, that his brother was in a life-threatening car crash. Things like that. So obviously that's going to play on his mind and affect him. But he's come roaring back, and he was back to his absolutely brilliant best on Saturday. He's, you know, what age is he now? 22, 23?
24.
24 years.
Is he only 24?
Yeah.
He feels like he's been around for a lot longer than that, doesn't he?
He was dynamite at the sevens. You know, I think the sevens has really helped him. I think the sevens has been a great pathway for Scotland players. What I think it really helps with is, because you have to know when to time jumping into a ruck with all that extra space to cover. He is so good at that. And because he has such a, you know, he's got such a dynamic leg drive, you know, he's short to the ground, he gets right in there. And also a lot of his attitude. You know, Darcy Graham is, if he's not a lion next time round, there's going to have to be some ridiculously good players ahead of him.
It was one of the things we talked about with the sevens as well, Ian, in terms of the first up tackling. So a guy like Darcy Graham, who obviously isn't the biggest guy and very much does punch above his weight defensively, in sevens there's no hiding place. So you make your tackle and that's it. You have to. And if you're going to be a good sevens player, there's no way you shy away from defence. So I've talked at length in this podcast actually about how important that, like, we talk about the attacking side of sevens and how exciting it is to see players running at pace and, you know, passing and all that. But actually, I think the defensive side of sevens is where we could really start to make some real gains, because we're having to teach players to you just have to smash your man. End of story. There's nothing else for it. So I think Darcy's benefited from that significantly.
Yeah, and he constantly proves everybody wrong. I mean, the fact that you know, I think on this podcast I think in 2018, early 2019, we're laughing saying there's no way Darcy Graham makes a World Cup squad. It's far too early for him. And then, you know, there he was, absolutely tearing it up. So, and then I think, you know, and people that say, you know, he's not good under a high ball, I mean, that's just not true. He's not, you know, clearly he's at a disadvantage in competing against a taller player in the air, but he gets height when he needs to, and the answer is, as we've always said, is you just don't stick him in the backfield.
Yeah,
he's up in defence, smashing players 3 times his size backwards.
I think we actually both our wingers were good under a high ball on the weekend.
Duhan is like, and again, it goes back to that Lions tour, doesn't it? Duhan is absolutely fantastic under the high ball. And it's a part of his game because he looks like Johnny Bravo on steroids and can knock players 6 ways, whatever way you want, and is rapid. We think, yeah, there's like, he can't have it all. It's the Tim Visser effect. There's no way he's going to be good on that. He's very good defensively, and his high ball is phenomenal. I just, one of the best parts of his game, and Scotland will benefit significantly from that.
He can't kick though.
But can he?
Is that the next?
We do know because he absolutely spooned it off his boot.
Yeah, but Alex Dunbar done that once as well. We can't judge a guy on one kick.
Alex Dunbar managed to kick it behind him.
At least Duhan's went forward.
Yeah.
The thing is, like, maybe Duhan can kick, but he took a ball inside our 22. Yeah, he took a ball inside our 22, basically a stride or two from his touchline on Saturday afternoon, and just went forward, nothing on, went sideways, looked for something to be on, nothing was on, turned around, looked for the smallest player and barreled and got it to like not far from the 10-meter line. So like, if you could do that from your touchline inside your 22, why would you bother learning to kick?
Either his debut or his second cap against Italy, he was in the same kind of position, and instead what he did was he's like, all right, you know, his left hand side as well, so he's not got a left boot. Well, he's not got a right boot. Never mind, left boot. So what did he say to? He just goes, all right, I'm going to blast. I think it was Geraldini. He blasted past, and then he sat down Negri, Sebastian Negri. You know what I mean? And got up to the edge of the 22, and then it's like, all right, easy clearance.
When you're that size, sitting down a back row and just setting it up for the guys that you like, we talk about rugby being a sport for all sizes and shapes. It's a game for all skill sets as well. Duncan Weir's made a very good career out of just being able to leather the absolute bejesus out the ball. So, you know, get it to the guys that can actually do that. Duhan's going to smash people and get it into that position. That's fine.
I think what was interesting as well at the weekend is that they're using Duhan to draw players in now, and they've quit. I think you know, we've said that with Stuart Hogg before, and that's what Stuart Hogg's very good about, drawing in defences. But the lead up to that penalty try is, you know, Finn Russell doing a crossfield chip to Duhan, who smashes into the 22 and then some, and it draws in so many English defenders that you're able to chip it to the other side, and you know, Darcy would have caught it, but we get the penalty try anyway.
If you've seen Sam Larner's analysis of Ben White's try, he says a really similar and quite interesting thing in that one, because Scotland go one way and then come back the other way, and even though England are underfolded because of Scotland go back the other way, Elliot Daly, who's got Duhan on that far side, is screaming for more men. And so they're bringing people over from the side where the play is about to go back to, because Elliot Daly is a phrase that I would use in the Patreon half himself, about the fact that he's been left on that far touchline with Duhan and absolutely screaming for players over, and that's how they end up short on the side that Scotland actually attacked it.
It's almost like Batman, isn't it? You kind of create enough of a myth around Doohan, and everyone's seen what he can do and the destruction he can cause. Just the mere thought of a ball being shipped out to him causes defenses to absolutely panic and create more space on the other wing.
Are you suggesting he is Dooman?
Dooman. God.
Oh, the imagery is going to be fantastic.
Let's stick with it. Let's stick with the backs then. Before we move at the forwards. Finn Russell again, just a phenomenal game. Craig, I think there's a lot of people. I think again because he doesn't do, he's not doing the mad crazy Finn stuff. Everyone's like, anybody could do that, but the way he manipulates defense is in the little things he does. Really, it's game changing.
Yeah, I won't have anyone say a word against him in this game today. On Saturday, he was up. He showed the Finn Russell he has become, and he recognised the fact that we're under a lot of pressure from England in the first 20 minutes. He ordered the guys around. He moved the team around where he needed them to be. You just need to look at, no matter what anyone says, if it was 58 seconds, we were in their 22 for the whole game, and we came away with the win. And if you think, that piece, that attack where he kicked, I've not seen this. I haven't seen it before in international rugby for someone to do a kick pass twice within the same set of same attack. And he, to have someone who's as confident to do that, and also can now manage the team when they're under the pump. He's grown into some, if he hasn't been world class lately, he is now world class.
Yeah. Best flyer from the Northern Hemisphere, Ian?
I'm a big fan of Intermac, to be honest.
Oh, it's not even a 10. He's better than 12. He's better than 12.
Yeah, but he's so beautiful. He's beautiful.
He's so fucking handsome. Oh, sorry. He's so damn handsome.
And that was the trap laid.
I'll get my pen out and write down the time you said the F word.
34:15.
Right,
best start is 34:8, to be honest.
Me going to bed late tonight.
Intermac at 12 is magnificent. Jalabert's a great 10. Intermac's not a 10. He's a 12.
Nonsense. Well, how many times has France won with Jalabert at 10?
Not as many as they should have, but Intermac's beautiful at 12.
And also,
but Finn Russell will still take it.
However, I'm still saying, regardless of how beautiful and good Rowan Intermac is, Finn Russell is still the better player. Yeah, I do think he is the best fly half in the Northern Hemisphere. And he's up there with the world. You can't deny that he's, we saw he's better than bigger. Pollard is pretty one-dimensional. And for all the, Sexton is amazing at what he does. But like Craig said, who has ever, two kick passes, and they're probably two touches in a row that he would have had. Would he have been involved much as they brought the ball inside? And also, not just that, they're on the money. You know what I mean? His kick passing is as accurate as a number 9's passing from hand. No one has that skill.
I'll tell you one thing, though.
Close to that level.
In Johnny Sexton's defence, he can take a shoulder into his chest and get a penalty for holding on to his forehead really, really well. If there's anyone that's a diver, I've never seen such ridiculous.
My God.
I can't believe it. I can't believe it because it's Johnny Sexton.
Craig, I don't know if you, if our paths had crossed at this point, but when I remember that time when Hamish Watson, the game in Dublin a couple of years ago, Hamish Watson, Sexton spilled it, Watson drove into him sort of right in the chest.
Yeah.
Sexton had to go low to pick the ball up and then sort of drove up and hit him in the neck, and Sexton went down holding his face.
Yeah.
So I called this out, and oh my word. I think it was 450,000 views later. Do you know what? Darcy Graham liked it as well. Which was great. Which,
Our friends in the Emerald Isle were not a fan of their
Are you allowed back to Ireland after that? Ian?
Saint Sexton
I've already
being
been.
called out.
the thing is, people
What?
from Cork completely agree, and it's true. He has been shown to dive.
Yeah.
There's no two
Yeah.
ways about it. It's just the rest of the team are really good.
Hashtag rugby values, guys.
Even that game, like when that incident happened with Watson and he went down after standing back up and then realising that, I think Scotland were going to get a scrum or an attacking line out. He then went down holding his face, and Keane Healy just went around and just went, "Get up, get up. Your game's already."
Yeah.
It's really poor, and it really bugs me actually, because it's this situation where
It
you've
takes
got
away from him so much.
you're absolutely right. You've got a guy who is like, I don't really care about the future development of fly halves in Ireland. Frankly, I would quite like it to be stifled. But you've got a guy who is obviously a massive hero to a lot of young kids in World Rugby, and he's throwing himself about like a footballer. And I'm going to use that term very deliberately because, we do know footballers have got more of a tendency to dive about, but it's exactly what he's done. And yes, people will come back and say, "Oh, but Stuart Hogg in the World Cup and all that nonsense." And yet, some people have done this in the past. It's about your reaction to it. Sexton has a consistent pattern of getting hit in areas. Now, it might just be that every bit of his body is now made of shortbread. So therefore, when he gets hit in his leg, it hurts all of him. And that, if he wants to explain that, that's fine. But actually, I just think he's a cheating twat.
It's like Stuart Hogg was 22 when he did that. He did that dive.
Yeah,
he
he wasn't
apologised instantly.
37.
Yeah, he apologised instantly to Nigel Owens, and then a couple of years later, he apologised. There was an interview ahead of a Six Nations campaign. He was like, "Yeah, I'm so embarrassed at myself," and it was also because that was also around just after the time when he was angling for a move to Ulster.
That was Ulstergate. Yes,
Yeah,
he was in a bad place.
Yeah, so he realised he'd actually been
Ulster?
Partly Glasgow at the time.
But we'll get back to Finn Russell because I don't want to spend too long talking. We can talk about Johnny Sexton more in the Patreon podcast in a bit.
Sorry, Cammy.
No, it's all right. Any opportunity to slag off Irish players, let's have it. Johnny, I mean, I think the other thing with Finn Russell, and people don't often see this unless you're kind of watching the post-match analysis, but it's the kind of way he controls the team. He's constantly, for the guy that's kind of got a reputation for being laid back, he's constantly pointing and ordering everybody around him and telling them where to stand. So he's so integral to the Scottish team and the way they play.
Yeah, and I think that his kind of the perceived kind of laid back persona that he's got probably helps in that regard, because I think he's obviously people around him trust him because he never looks flustered. So he keeps going all the time, and he's always he's calling for men over here, he's calling for this, he's calling for that, he's calling for that. And as much as he is constantly going, he never looks like anything's bothering him. So I think in the middle of a game like that, if he's going, you do that, you do that, you do that, but keeping his composure, it's dead easy for everyone around him to just go, yeah, okay, this seems fine.
Yeah, I think that John saying that, was it Josh Smith on YouTube saying the read that England didn't have a hooker and the setup and kick to take advantage of it was superb. And you watch, and he manipulates the English defence to give himself time to kick through, and for Hamish Watson, to chase through. And then, England don't have a hooker; they can't bring on a temporary replacement. It would have to be a permanent substitute.
Yeah,
and
it's no accident. It's that's the difference. These situations happen, and you go, "Oh, that's worked out. That's great." It's no accident when Finn Russell does it, because he shows it every other week. That he's able to see the game in blooming 14D, and just understand. Yeah. So literally red pill, blue pill, Finn Russell. He just sees the game, and it's actually something that I read an article quite a wee while ago about. It was actually English rugby. They were looking at bringing in a coach to look at vision, and by vision they were talking about actually your peripheral vision and being able to see and spot things around you very quickly. And I would bet my last pound that if you were to put Finn Russell in front of one of those coaches, they would be like, you are incredible at this, because he just sees everything around him and is able to calculate what he needs to do at that point. He is the complete fly half. And I would go a step further and say, I don't think the Southern Hemisphere has anyone on par with him.
Yeah. John, do you want to have a chance to gloat about Matt Ferguson now?
I mean, I'm sure Ian will want to come in on this as well, because both myself and Ian have been very vociferous in our defence of Matt Ferguson. Yeah, so what a performance, and more than justified. I thought Bradbury, when he came on, was decent enough, done his job.
I'm not letting you away with that one because he came
Craig's
on.
frowning. Craig, you'll have your right to reply.
You'll have your,
Okay,
yeah,
okay.
he came on. He done his bit, and he was good. Part of a very good performance. Fagerson was box office, absolute box office. The stats alone tell their story, but everything Fagerson was doing, he was leading that pack about against in a very, very taxing circumstances, because the English were on top, and the ball that he was getting was always back foot, and it was just making meters, making yards. It was for me, it was like, we talk about number 8 performances, and we want these guys, these 6'6" monsters, to be smashing people out the way and running like 20 meters down the road whilst battering people left and right. Fagerson's performance was the modern number 8 performance, and it was perfect. It was absolutely perfect.
Ian, before I give Craig a right to reply, have you got anything to add to that?
I wouldn't say exactly it was perfect. There was the miscommunication at a restart with him and Darcy, but it's like the only blot on either of their copybooks.
Darcy's fault.
Yeah, somebody should have shouted. You know what? I'm not going to say.
Always blame the back.
Exactly.
Yeah, but what I'd been having a discussion with somebody who I thought, like, it's on the Scottish Rugby Forum, and for like the 13 or 15 positions, I thought he was spot on. But one thing that I wasn't having was Bradbury being better in a close quarter battle than Fagerson. I was like, no, I want to see Bradbury running onto a ball, right? Because he's getting a bigger stride. I want to see him running onto a ball and taking men on. Then he can bounce a man. Okay, but what Ferguson does, he's more of a burrower. You know, he's shorter man. He gets right through. He has a higher work rate than Bradbury. Even still, Bradbury has been in great form this season. I'm not going to deny that at all. But Matt Ferguson in command of that number 8 jersey, and I think usually he's been like a 7 or 8 out of 10. He's maybe made one. I think there was a game against Ireland. I think it was. He'd been playing really well. I think it was the one we just narrowly lost. But then he does a knock on like 10 metres from the line. We were in a good position. And it's like, if you just held, you've been doing so well so far. If you'd held that and kept us going, that would have been better. But Saturday was exceptional. And he is in command of that number 8 jersey. And that's the number 8 that Gregor Townsend wants to play, because, well, like John said, you know, we don't have a 6 foot. We don't have someone like, we don't have a Billy Vunipola type tank, peak Billy Vunipola. I mean, because, you know, he's kind of rotten most of the time. Or we don't have Louis Picamol, who is one of my favourite 8s of all time. You know,
it's so good, so good.
Just the offloads and the running.
And before we go to Craig, though, just to be very clear, we are both saying, like, I said this on the preview pod, and you will have all heard this. Magnus Bradbury, for me, is the form 8 in club rugby. I think he has been phenomenal this season. I've been really impressed with the step up he's taken. I think that we're starting to see this potential that we've talked about for what feels like 100 years. And I think Bradbury has a place in this squad now. I wouldn't have said that before. I would have said he is a guy who has all the talent in the world but doesn't take his chances. I think he's got this option now, and I think he will. I think he'll slot in against Wales, and he'll be. I've got no doubt he'll end up being man of the match and knocking people always. But for me, Fagerson took the challenge of that Bradbury playing better at club level and just said, you know what, this is my shirt and I'm keeping it. So jog on, son.
I suppose I know you don't like talking about depth, Craig, because of your experiences with swimming pools as a youngster, but one of the bonuses of having depth is that, Bradbury came on and slotted in, and like I said, there's no backward step, there's no drop in performance from a Scotland point of view, but with Bradbury coming on and having Matt Ferguson having to look over his shoulder at Bradbury coming only drives Matt Ferguson on, and trying to kind of get past Matt Ferguson will only drive Magnus Bradbury on. And in a way, we kind of got the perfect situation here of two very high quality eights spurring each other on for the next few years.
Yeah, Matt Ferguson was the right number 8 for the game on Saturday. He does incredibly. I agree with both John and Ian when they say Matt Ferguson's a standstill 8, as in he can take a ball when he's standing still and he can still gain yards. Magnus Bradbury, again, as Ian has said, he does his biggest damage when he's on the move. He has to take a ball not a canter, but he needs to be moving, whereas Matt Ferguson doesn't. I think, you've all covered it pretty well. I wouldn't say Matt Ferguson was box office. I would say he did his job incredibly well. And yes, he is a number. He's put his name on the jersey. What you might find is that he may move to 6 on the weekend, and Bradbury goes in at 8 because he's been performing very, very well at 6 for Glasgow, with Dempsey being at number 8. So you may find that, but I think where we're to I'm not throwing the toys out the pram about it. I think Bradbury he doesn't deserve the jersey because he's not been in the jersey because of all his performances prior to now. So we can't turn around. It's Matt Ferguson's jersey to lose, and I think Matt Ferguson stepped up and did an incredibly good job on the weekend.
Yeah, I would agree, Craig. I think maybe we're just being semantic here, but Matt Ferguson's jersey to lose, it's Magnus Bradbury's jersey to gain. It's his to drag it off his back, and I think they're both doing that. Such competition.
Yeah, and all I was going to say was he made the most tries, the person who scored the most tries in the English Premiership in a season look very average.
Yes.
Sam Simmons was very average on the weekend.
And I agree with you as well, Craig. I think for the weekend you might see Ferguson move to 6 because I would
please don't ruin my dream of a Hamish Watson, Rory Darge.
Cam, I would love that. I would love that so much. I think that this is head, heart, and arse speaking here, but I would love.
Darge is going to be on the bench.
Does anyone know how much line-out ball Richie took? Because the only Gilco and Grant Gilchrist was outstanding. Incidentally,
see if we can get the stats while you are talking.
Because see, I don't know if they'll maybe just drop Richie in at 6. Bradbury in for Richie at 6. And maybe look for him to
that's what they will do, mate. I think that's what they will do.
Yeah, just have him running down, sort of see if there's a gap around the ruck, down the narrow channel, down the blind side. Keep Ferguson in the middle, right in the middle of the pitch.
Once the game starts and they see how the set piece is going, it doesn't really matter. Like, one of them's going to be wearing 6, one of them's going to be wearing 8. Where they actually end up playing once the game starts could completely depend on how it goes.
So to answer your question, Ian, so our top line-out performer at the weekend was Johnny Gray with 5. Then it was Jamie Ritchie with 4, and then Grant Gilchrist with 3. So Ritchie was our second option at line-out.
So that's going to be a bit like his Darge isn't really a line-out option, is he? Because I think I tried to look it up on the.
He's not.
No,
he's not, but there's no reason why he can't be. He's literally the same size as him.
No, hang on, John. That's That's absolutely correct. You're right. But he's not there yet. So
Matt Ferguson was used as a long line out option. I'm sure he's been used. Like he's got a good. Well, if you've got big.
Look, by the time this podcast goes out, all of this academic because the team's getting announced tomorrow. So people will be listening to this Thursday afternoon, going, "Well, they were wrong." I want to talk about Hamish Watson a little bit while we're on the back row, Johnny, because I think Hamish Watson at the minute is suffering with a little bit of the Finn Russells that people watch him, and because he's not doing things that we used to him doing, everyone thinks he had a quiet game. And I don't, having watched the game back and then seen various bits of analysis afterwards, he did not have a quiet game. He didn't take the ball and kind of drag 15 men with him over the course of like half a metre, but his work in defence was phenomenal.
Yeah, he didn't do a lot of the stuff that people kind of expected to do for quite a similar reason to why Stuart Hogg has started apparently doing less of the stuff that you expected to do, which is that people make plans for Hamish Watson now. People know where Hamish Watson is all the time. And so that's a job in itself, because then that gives the people around him more chance to do more of what they do, because there's more attention than possibly is necessary drawn to Hoggy and drawn to Hamish. And then everybody around them has got a little bit more freedom. So as much as you say, he used to take every ball and pinball 6 or 7 people and be digging into every ruck, he's maybe not doing that so much anymore. But the fact that everybody is looking for him to do it means that the people around him are getting to do it a bit more and be a bit more effective with it.
Yeah. We're coming to anybody else kind of stand out for you at all, Craig?
Well, I can't say anything apart from the 2 front rows that came on off the bench.
Yeah.
Schumann and WP Nell did exactly what we talked about last week. And also the week before when the full squad was announced. Watching Nell was great because of the reset scrums. You could actually watch him do his job, and watching Joe Marler trying to bend him down and trying to pull him down and then firing him back up into his chest. It was just fabulous. And Schumann, all I want in all my life now is the whole Scotland fan group in Murrayfield to shout "shoo" when he gets the ball, rather than just the Edinburgh fans, because it's kind of like it still sounds a little bit like he's being booed by a certain amount of fans.
Point of order, Craig. It's "skoo."
I know it's "skoo," but it's we shout "shoo." It doesn't really matter. It sounds.
You're doing him a disservice. That's not his name.
I'm not doing him a disservice.
That's like spelling Ian with one eye.
Is it?
What do you even get us going on that?
Difference? Is there a difference?
It's like spelling Johnny with an H, isn't it?
Yeah.
Denny.
But yeah, I think I definitely think the 2 front rows served their purpose and did an incredibly good job. And Turner again has proven everyone's faith in him. He had a fabulous game as well. So yeah, my hat's off. But you wouldn't expect anything less from me to take my hat off for the front rows.
I did enjoy there was I think it was just before either the last scrum or the second last scrum, and there was a close up of Joe Marler on the ref cam, absolutely blown out of his arse.
Yeah,
he was gone, and he's a replacement scrum. And the cut, and WPNL was checking his studs as if he still had another 20 minutes in him.
Tell you what, WPNL did get pinged for being offside in defence once, which was just like the clearest indication of exactly. He's just like, I'm here to do the scrums, and I will walk backwards in between scrums, and if I'm offside, that's your problem. let's just get to another scrum. I'll do what I'm here for. And he did it absolutely brilliantly. I thought it was phenomenal.
Yeah.
To give a big shout out as well to another front row, he's maybe not had as much love over the last couple of days than some of his brethren, but Xander Fagerson was the 3rd highest tackler for Scotland at the weekend, and for a tight head prop to be putting in 12 tackles in a game, missing none, by the way. Phenomenal effort.
And you see that there's a clip I put on Twitter of Hamish Watson literally tackling 3 English
Tackling
players.
3 people.
Three, and everyone will try and argue it's he's not. He's just tackling one, and another one's got him. It's like it took 3 English players to take him down, and he was defending the ball, right? But immediately after that, the first player to arrive at the ruck is Xander to try and win the turnover. He's there,
Xander and Matt together as well, and just like a textbook. Xander did a lot of that. He was a nuisance on Saturday.
He was an absolute nuisance.
Do you know where else he was a nuisance? Rugby special.
We're just back into the game very shorter, but delighted today that we've been joined by one of the victorious Scottish players, Xander Fagerson. Xander, thanks so much for joining us today. Firstly, how's the head? Decent celebration last night?
Yeah, no, it was good fun. I had an early night, caught with the family today, but I think a few boys definitely ripped the arse out of it, yeah.
Okay, I might just have to apologise for that, but I absolutely don't blame you for being overexcited after yesterday's football.
That was wonderful.
That's absolutely, because you can see if he smiled before the interview even starts, and then he stumbles over it when he's saying it. Like he was put up to that.
Really, I reckon a fine for dropping the first scrum.
Yeah,
got to go on telly and say
he's been told to say that. Yeah.
Must be.
Poor wee choir boy Xander as well.
I know. What I liked towards the end of the interview, you can hear an email notification ding go off. I like guaranteed he's on the press officer's laptop and someone's email going, "What the hell?"
Either that was Finn Russell pinging him a wee email going, "Aye, nice one, son."
The press office were obviously all too busy with Reece Tate dropping an accidental F-bomb during his under-20s interview on Friday night.
Everybody, all squads in for media training Monday morning.
Reece Tate's was totally unnecessary as well. It was just like completely for no reason in his very first question.
It's kind of the modern version, isn't it, of the Finn Russell in the press conference using the stats to create a paper airplane to throw at Ali Price as he's doing his interview. As I was sitting beside him, and he's like literally taking it, and he's looking at Ali going, "I'm making a paper airplane, mate." And I'm like, "Finn, that's the official stats. What you're playing at?" And he's got his feet up in the seats and everything. And then it's like Ali's talking away, looking at him like, "Don't do this. Finn, don't." And he's like, "Hey." Like, oh,
Ian McGill has asked, "Can swearing like a chorister be a thing now?"
Absolutely, Ian. Absolutely.
Yep.
Just for you.
Well, look, I think we're coming up to the hour mark.
Quick Sam Johnson appreciation moment.
Yeah, go on,
yes,
you go.
let's
As
do
per
that.
usual. He's just solid, isn't he? He's just, he
Don't
just does
even.
everything you want him to do. What? He makes
What
his
do
yards.
Craig,
Do you want to share it with the rest of the class?
And
today?
that bit when like Finn Russell pointed at him and just went, "Run over there, Sam. We were a bit short on the blind side." "Yes, boss." Sprinted over. See, if that was Chris Harris, everyone would be blowing their loads. No, it's just wee Sammy G.
Okay.
Not getting the love that he
Extremely
deserves.
underrated Sam
What-
Johnson.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What I imagine. Did you ever see there was a
Why
series
is
of
he
episodes?
underrated?
There's a series of episodes of Malcolm in the Middle where Reese joins the army, right? And he decides just to give into it and clear his head and only follow orders and becomes the perfect soldier. And that to me is Sam Johnson, right?
Yeah.
He's clear, like he goes on the pitch, like he empties his head and goes on the pitch and just does what Finn Russell tells him to do.
What
And
better
is very
players around
effective
him
at it.
tell him to do? Yeah. He's perfect.
Essentially,
soldier.
it's like an extension of Finn Russell on the pitch.
I think the
Cueto in is it Quato or Cueto in Total Recall?
Keto.
Yeah. When he,
Start the reactor.
open your mind.
No, that's Finn to Sam Johnson. Just block out your mind. Yes, boss.
To answer your question, Craig, I think Sam Johnson, chronically underrated because he provides something that Scotland fans don't necessarily value, that really like the build-up play that generates that space for our really exciting backs and forwards to create havoc in. Scottish fans love a 30-metre gallop or a miss pass or a look at us scoring from like 10 metres out. Sam Johnson does those hard lines, creates that space for them to do that, but also defensively, he is absolutely rock solid. He's one of the best 12s defensively we've had since Alex Dunbar.
Sam Johnson, whenever he's doing those carries, always presents the ball quickly and very rarely turns it over.
Yeah, it doesn't make huge yards
from the initial phase in the centres.
Yeah, it's not huge yards, but it's back and it's the perfect line. It creates enough space. There's like the ruck can't get over him.
So you're telling me he's a 6 out of 10 then?
Look, I think, but that's just sometimes that's what you need. Look, not everybody can be a 9, 10 out of 10 every match, can they? Ross Ford showed us that. But I do think it's a. And again, I don't want to preview the Wales match too much because we'll do that on Friday in a separate podcast. We've got some guests from a Welsh podcast join us to do that and run through the lineups. But I think that we'll probably see over the course of the Six Nations that the lineups, Scottish lineups, they'll be the same spine of the team, but things will change. I'm not sure that Sam Johnson's going to start at 12 every game. It's horses for courses, and Sam Johnson is the 12 Scotland needed against that England team, and it worked very effectively. I'm not sure he's the 12 that they'll need against Wales or Ireland or Italy. Possibly he's the 12 they need against France. I don't know. We'll find out.
If Wales are going to start Nick Tompkins and Josh Adams in the centre again, let's get Sione on and see if he can make 7 million metres.
Yeah. Okay. I think we've covered as much as we're going to cover in the main podcast this week. We will be back on Friday lunchtime for our Patreons live with a preview of the Wales and Scotland match, where we'll go through the lineups, kind of get a sense of what each team is trying to do, if there is any way of getting sense of what this Wales team's trying to do. That'll be available for download afterwards for everybody on audio podcasts. We'll then be back next Wednesday 8:30 to review the Wales game. We will just very briefly mention that we did have a live podcast planned on the last weekend of the Six Nations. That has been cancelled. So if you bought tickets for that, the organisers will be in touch about refunds. If you are the competition winners, again, they'll be in touch about that as well. We don't have any alternative plans to do a live podcast. However, if you are having a function that day, if you have a rugby club and you want us to come along and do something, then we're more than happy to do that. Otherwise,
particularly put lots of money behind your bar, especially with me.
Yeah, get in touch. Podcast at scottishrugbyblog.co.uk. We'll be in Edinburgh that weekend. Even if we all just end up in a pub watching the game together.
Is it a Saturday?
It is a Saturday.
Yeah, super Saturday.
Good. Yeah. I'll need to go to work on Monday. I'll die on Sunday. That'll be fine.
That's fine. Anyway, so that's it for this week. We'll be back, like I said, we'll be back next Wednesday, 8:30. If you are a Patreon, hang on, and if you're watching live, and you'll get the extra podcast in a moment. But for the moment, it is goodbye from me and goodbye from Craig, Ian, John, and Johnny.
Bye.
Cheers all.